Hugh, greetings. This is a one life clear of Contra Hardcore using Fang on the US version. The US version has some differences with the Japanese and European versions, mainly some dialogue, and the Japanese version has a hit point system. You get 3 hits per life, but in certain situations it's an instant death either way. They've also got cheat codes like the Konami code that gives you 70 lives, but the US version is pretty plain Jane, so it's all on you. Now, getting Fang's A and D weapons here can trip you up a little bit. You want to try and get the D weapon first, that way you can switch off to the A weapon, because having the D weapon usually leaves you a little bit vulnerable at first. So we got our first real mini-boss here. There's really not much to talk about here. Just keep up with your A weapon with most characters and you should be able to just pass this pretty quickly. You can jump or slide over him. I try and slide for cool points. Alright, so we got Maximum Jumbo coming up. If you have an A weapon, or even if you have the standard gun, just standing in this particular spot and aiming straight up at him, you can usually get him rather fast before he does anything too crazy. As you can see in the exact spot I'm standing, it will let me avoid pretty much all of the fire that he has. And that's it. You can actually mess this part up. As you can see, I almost messed that up. I almost missed that. Another thing to note is that in this particular Contra, there is a shot 1 and a shot 2. Shot 2 keeps you stationary and lets you fire in 8 directions. 90% of the game is through shot 1. Occasionally you go into shot 2. And this fight in itself is pretty easy with Fang. Just get the flamethrower, go to town. He's going to jump over you a few times. He'll jump on this platform, then he'll jump on that platform. If you kept up a steady amount of fire, by the time he hits this jump back to the middle, you'll have completed the first phase of the fight. So then he'll slice the building up. Be very careful on this part because that hitbox is very, very, very deceptive. It can hit you. So to get the ending that we desire, we will be rescuing the research center. Alright, so we got the small tank boss. I tend to like to stick to this particular portion of the wing that I'm on because it gives me a little bit more leeway, but you can do it however you want. So, the name of the game is shoot the bad guys as they pop out of the missiles, jump over the missiles to avoid them. 6 bad guys crash into the tank, and that's the end of the small tank boss. Those guys can shoot, but usually no matter what weapon you use, you can get them one try. So those of you that have played Contra 3 should be very familiar with this next boss that's coming up. The beauty of Fang's weaponry is that it's so dang powerful that you can pretty much get him in one shot once he goes to reattach himself. Now this part, you definitely want to be careful because your positioning and the chopper can actually mess you up. As you can see, I almost got hit right there by the laser. That would have ended the run. We'll just keep up the firepower and he'll be gone in no time at all. With Wonderbird, you can pretty much just use whatever weapon you have available as your strongest weapon and that'll take it down. Be very careful on that last particular section because the flame can mess you up as the game automatically puts you into the position for the cutscene coming up. I have to use his D weapon a lot more. It's probably the strongest weapon in the game outside of the bombs. There's not too much going on here. So long as you watch your back and your shots are on point, you can't fail this portion. Being quite honest, you really don't even need to fight those guys either, but I just do it because. So, we've got the huge robot boss coming up, and those of you that have played Contra 3, he might look a little bit familiar. So, for Fang in particular, if you stand on this spot on the wall and just use the flamethrower, this fight is actually caked. Something to note is that when he stacks that first set to lean, it can go either way. So long as you have Fang's flamethrower, you should be alright no matter which way it goes. And if you keep up the fire on him, by the time he gets around to stacking the third set of blocks to do something, he should be dead. Here's one of the few instances where I love to use shot 2. If you stand directly in the middle and hit shot 2, you can get all of these bikers as they're coming down. Occasionally I use shot 2 here just to keep myself in a stationary position, because if you move too far, these guys that jump out, they may actually drop down onto you. Either that, or you can just use the flamethrower and just keep up a steady supply of pressure or fire on them. So now we've got the Dustman boss. Pretty straightforward. Then he'll hop over. You'll just need to keep jumping and shooting him in the eye. You can also use a bomb if you're feeling kind of lazy. And his hitbox, or his hurtbox rather, is vulnerable all the way until he goes into the ground. So that's why you saw me crouch there to try and get a few additional shots. That was close. Should be noted, if you climb on top of that wall and go straight up, you can go into the battle arena and get one of the endings, where you go back in time. But we'll be going up against Neumann Cascade. So this is a multi-phase boss fight. So first he'll appear as different zodiac signs, so we'll start with Taurus. Being quite honest, if you would like to use a bomb here, you can, because things can get a little bit hectic with you having to slide back and forth to avoid them. So it's entirely at your discretion. If you feel like you can manage without it, then fine. For the Sagittarius portion, where he shoots the arrows, if you stand right underneath him with the flamethrower, the arrows will never hit you, because you'll destroy them before they even get a chance to go anywhere. When he becomes Gemini, that's where things get a little bit tricky, because this flight pattern that he takes is super duper erratic, as well as the energy balls that he fires at you get super erratic. So again, if you're not feeling up to it, you can just use a bomb and completely eliminate this portion of the fight. So now we get on to Neumann using the Square Terror. So for this particular part, you'll just walk back and forth out of the path of the, I guess, Tetris block that he fires at you. And when he gets around here, that's when you see me sliding to avoid it. So for the tank portion, just make sure you're all the way in the corner, and Fang's A weapon, so long as he's crouched, he will never hit you, and the tank shots will never hit you either. If you have a character that has a homing weapon, you can stand in that same position and do the same thing. The helicopter portion can be a little bit tricky if you're not sure when he's going to drop the rotor and start dropping squares onto you. So again, if you want to use a bomb for this portion, totally up to you. So for the quick portion in the jungle, if you have Fang, just use your flamethrower and just go diagonally up and straight, and you'll clear out that particular wave rather easily. These creatures here, they can actually hit you and they take a lot more damage than you would think, so make sure you have your strongest weapon available. So now we get on to another mini-boss called the Neo Kappa. The name of the game is just avoid the arms and avoid the gunshot that he shoots out of his nostrils, or beak. So when he starts glowing red, that's when you back away. Now usually his pattern sees that he picks up the bridge and then shoots and then picks up the bridge again. You saw there was a little bit of a variation in that after he shot, he went to go shoot again. Nothing too special here, just avoid the armadillos and shoot them. A thing to note is that this dinosaur, if you shoot or slide at its nose, it will release a energy stream out of its nostrils, and it can kill you. Even if you were playing the Japanese version, it can kill you in one hit with the 3 HP system that you have in the Japanese version. So now we have the next mini-boss, the Evil Snowman. Just avoid wherever he's at. It's that simple. The trickiest part of this particular stage of the fight is when he retracts his legs and he starts bouncing around. Actually, on second thought, this part can get a little tricky as well. So after you complete the first phase, another sphere flies in, attaches itself to that one, and thus begins the second part of the fight. It should be worth noting that you cannot do damage to the Evil Snowman in the second phase until the legs attach. So I was just doing that for laughs. You can slide through here, just be very careful once he starts flipping around. When he goes into this portion, the fight is pretty much over. Just keep aiming up, and then on the third pass, you're going to aim diagonally to the right, and you're done. Be very, very careful with these plants here, because depending on where they are on the screen, on their growth or their height, they can just shoot energy balls into the air that you will not see. Alright, now we have another run-in with Deadeye Joe. This fight can play a little bit differently depending on if you actually went after Deadeye Joe. Since he's in it, there is a little bit something that we have to keep in mind, which I'll state once it comes up. So for this particular portion of the fight, I like to end this really fast because he can fire that little machine gun in every direction, and it can ruin the run for you if you're not expecting it. So 3 of the charge blasts pretty much take care of it. On this particular portion of the fight, he is invulnerable to damage. However, you can shoot him and push him towards the opposite wall. His attack or wall scraping pattern is completely randomized, so you notice here that I don't shoot that much, if at all, because I'm trying to make sure that he doesn't go back and forth. With a little bit of RNG, he's just going to keep flying straight up and you won't have to worry about anything. Should be worth noting that if you did not die and you're still on the right wall once this phase of the fight starts and you end up on the top of the screen, this fight is significantly easier. Do be careful when he rolls down, because that hitbox in itself is also very deceptive, and that he can hit with the actual body of the robot. And do not ask me how I survived that shot. I cannot tell you. So, if Deadeye Joe is actually in the robot for this portion, he will fire missiles. They do seek you out, so ensure that you have a weapon that covers a wide area and has some armor-piercing capability. That way you can just avoid the missiles altogether. Then you'll have some more homing missiles. It took me a while to actually switch to the flamethrower here. I don't know, I guess I just had a bit of a brain fog. So this part of the fight. So the legs, you can completely pass through them, but notice as I'm shooting him, he's moving back and forth along the, I guess, a rubber band? So keep that in mind. So how the phase of this fight goes is that you climb on the ceiling, go around, slide underneath, go around. And it will always be in a counterclockwise rotation. Being that once you stop firing, he can actually snap back. Be very careful when you're firing when he stops in certain positions, because it can snap back and hit you. Like this particular instance, I did have one run that was ended because I did not stop firing fast enough, and he snapped back and shot me with the beam. So the name of the game here is consistency and patience, and you really cannot mess this up. Notice that I opted to not shoot while the laser was pointed straight up, because it would have snapped back and killed me once I stopped firing. I don't know why this particular fight took so long. I think, once again, had I just stuck with Fang's D weapon or gotten more mastery with it, because it is a bit of an anomaly to me. Had I actually used the D weapon, I probably could have cleared that a lot faster. The trap has been sprung. So, to get the ending we desire, we opt to fight to the end. This is where Fang's D weapon will actually come in handy, because it is very, very powerful for certain things. Like that. As I stated before, it is one of the most powerful weapons in the game, if not the most powerful weapon in the game, second to the bombs. That particular boss also has another phase where he will shoot an energy blast at you that travels along the floor in your direction, so if you get to that part, just jump over it. There I opted to use Fang's V weapon because that little section can get rather erratic. When you see this particular setup, it's a little, I guess, alien that's going to give you weapons and bombs. I usually just wait until I get one bomb and then I just defeat it. Like I said, Fang's weaponry makes very, very short work of a lot of the game's bosses. And this is where the Dr. Geo Mandrake decides to put everything into his Monster Genesis machine. And then he becomes a product of it. So for this particular fight, so long as you have a weapon that can pierce a wall, like Fang's flamethrower, you will be okay. If you don't have a weapon that pierces walls, this fight can get a little bit tricky. So just keep that in mind. To the best of my knowledge, Fang's A weapon, Brownie's A weapon, Sheena's D weapon are the only ones I know of that pierce walls. So there's not too much going on for these fights, so long as you keep your firepower up and a little bit of shot 2 never hurts, you'll do just fine with the Takeda robots. I briefly tried to use the D weapon and then I realized that my timing would have been incredibly off. So as he's going back and forth across the screen, you can avoid it by sliding when he does the big dives. When he goes from left to right, you can easily just jump over him until he goes off the screen. And now we get on to the actual part of the Takeda robots fight. At first it'll transform into, I guess, a runner form. It doesn't have too many attacks to worry about here, just keep jumping and keeping up a steady stream of fire. When you see him fall back and go completely off the screen, he's going to dive, like so. So just make sure you're all the way to the left of the screen and then jump over him as he crashes down. He will occasionally do a flip attack, like so. Just time it correctly so that you can get around it, and when he gets to this portion of the screen, he will fire heat-seeking missiles. Stay in shot 2, aim diagonally up and to the right, and you'll take care of the missiles, and then he'll go back into jumping along the screen, like so. Then he transforms into the next portion, which is the bird portion. Just watch the movement very, very closely for this one because it does move a little bit on the erratic side. Once he starts doing the lightning, that's where shot 2 comes in handy. Just stand right underneath so that you avoid the arc and you're fine. You may occasionally switch to the right side of the screen and I guess start laying eggs, more or less. Just time your jumps and you're fine. then it turns into the tank form. So more of the same, just jumping to ensure that you can get fire onto it. When it does that attack, you have to stand in the targeted area to actually avoid getting hit. So keep that in mind. That targeted area is where you will not get shot. When he does this attack, you can use bombs to get through it, and you don't even necessarily have to be overzealous for damage like I was. You can just opt to walk back and forth without shooting, if you feel more comfortable that way. So not much of note here. Just make sure that you're keeping fire on everybody so that you don't get hit by a random stray bullet. Here's where things get a little bit tough. I opt for Fang's A weapon because it allows me to just jump over this bullet and keep on putting a little bit of fire onto that particular cannon. So when the men decide to form up and do a particular letter, I prefer to just use bombs to just be done with it. Do not stand too close as I was, because they can actually flip up and hurt you. When it comes to them in this pyramid form, you can opt to use bombs to make it easy on yourself, or I believe if you have a homing weapon, it may actually just do the trick for you. Just remember to slide through when they're mostly in line with the screen and you'll be alright. It should be noted that you can get the bad ending, quote unquote, by siding with Colonel Bahamut on this one. However, it doesn't really end the game. All it does is just bring you to a bad screen with a game over and a continue. So Colonel Bahamut has a few attacks, like the sliding or dashing attack, then he'll cannonball at you, and then he'll throw a piece of the base at you. Be noted, until those debris disappear, you can get hit by them, so just stay away. Now, for some reason, I'm not sure what happened to Colonel Bahamut's AI here to where he just kept jumping back and forth, but if this happens, then just roll with it. So we're almost to the end here, so we have a quick section where we'll be taking on Deadeye Joe. If you do have a bomb left, you can opt to use that, but either Fang's A or C weapon would be totally fine for this fight. Just avoid the gunfire that he does and you'll be okay. He doesn't have much HP. You'll want to jump on the last rocket pod because that's the only one that's going to take you to where you need to go, so that's why I preemptively jumped onto it. For the most part, you can keep climbing straight up the wall. You don't have to worry about those little pods that start shooting out insects. The only one you will have to worry about actually is the very last one, with this mini-boss coming up. So either Fang's A or C weapons will work adequately. Just keep in mind that you do still have to shoot the insects that come out. this guy can be very, very, very tricky. That energy blast that he does, the very last portion of it seems to track a lot better than the rest of it. So you may have to slide through, you may have to jump over the last little remnants of it. Keep in mind that as you are jumping over the last remnants of that energy blast, he can do that attack and actually come down onto you. So just time your jumps properly, because you wouldn't want to get caught jumping over the energy blast like that, and then he tries to come down and eat you. If you do still have any bombs left, this is the very last boss fight in the game, so expend them at your own discretion. For this particular phase, the flamethrower will work you wonders. You'll grab, or you'll destroy the arms rather, before they even have a chance to swoop down and hit you. So just keep going back and forth, and eventually you'll get to the last phase of this fight. It will drop maggots out, and then it will only be vulnerable when the eyeball is exposed, and then it'll swing around to the other side. I don't know why it took me so long to actually use Fang's A weapon here, because that weapon is actually a lot more effective in both making sure that the maggots don't ever hit the ground, and to put a little bit of firepower onto the vulnerable eye itself. As you can see, I do switch back and forth between shot 1 and shot 2, just so I'm not running up onto him. And that is the end of the game. Next up, I will probably do Ray. So, keep an eye out for that. And I will see you guys later. Thank you for watching.